My son asked the doctor, "How long does she have left? I need to know when to sell her house." I was standing behind the wall in the hallway and heard the entire conversation. The next day, I called my lawyer and... Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I never thought I'd spend my 73rd birthday planning how to survive my own son's greed. But life has a way of teaching you lessons when you least expect them, doesn't it? For 20 years after Harold's death, I'd lived in our house on Maple Street. The same house where we'd raised our 3 children, celebrated countless Christmases, and built a lifetime of memories. The mortgage was paid off decades ago. The garden still bloomed every spring just like Harold had designed it. I wasn't wealthy, but I was comfortable. My pension covered my needs, and I'd saved enough to maintain my independence. My son Bradley was my youngest, the baby of the family. Maybe that's why I'd always been softest with him. His sisters, Jennifer and Patricia, had moved out of state. Jennifer to Oregon with her family, Patricia to Florida after her divorce. But Bradley stayed close. Too close, I would later realize. He married Vanessa 5 years ago, a sharp-eyed woman with expensive tastes and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I tried to like her. I really did. What mother doesn't want to embrace her son's choice? But there was something calculated in the way she assessed my home during visits, running her fingers along the oak banister, commenting on the prime location and incredible lot size. The first troubling sign came 6 months ago. I'd mentioned casually that I'd been feeling more tired than usual, nothing serious, just age catching up with me. Bradley's response seemed overly concerned. He insisted I see a specialist, made the appointments himself, drove me to every single one. "Mom, you need to take this seriously," he'd said, gripping my hand too tightly in the waiting room. "We need to know exactly what we're dealing with." At the time, I thought it was love. How foolish I was. The doctors found nothing alarming. High blood pressure, manageable with medication, some arthritis. Normal wear and tear for a woman my age. I'd live another 20 years easily, they said, if I kept active and followed their recommendations. But Bradley seemed almost disappointed. No, that couldn't be right. I must have imagined the flash of frustration in his eyes when Dr. Morrison delivered the good news. Then came the gentle suggestions. "Mom, this house is too big for you. What if you fell? What if something happened and no one was here?" Vanessa would chime in. "We saw the cutest assisted living facility, Margaret. Such a vibrant community. You'd make so many friends." I refused. This was my home. Harold's home. I wasn't ready to leave it. The visits became more frequent, always with the same undertone. How was I managing the stairs? Had I thought about what would happen to the house eventually? Had I updated my will? That last question should have been the warning bell I couldn't ignore. 3 weeks ago, I caught a cold. Nothing serious. A scratchy throat, some congestion. But Bradley insisted I see Dr. Morrison again. He took me to the appointment, and I was grateful for the ride. The waiting room was crowded that day, so Dr. Morrison called Bradley back alone first to discuss my medical history. I needed to use the restroom, so I stepped into the hallway. That's when I heard them. The door to the examination room hadn't closed completely. My son's voice carried through the gap, urgent and low. "How long does she have, realistically? I need to know because we're looking at selling her house, and the market's hot right now. If we wait too long..." I froze. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Dr. Morrison's confused voice. "Bradley, your mother has a minor respiratory infection. She's in excellent health overall. I expect she'll live many more years." "But she's 73, Bradley interrupted. "And she lives alone. Anything could happen. A fall, a stroke. I need to prepare. I need a timeline." My hand found the wall to steady myself. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my son, my baby boy, standing in a doctor's office calculating how soon he could sell my home out from under me. When should I start listing the house? Bradley's voice continued. What's the realistic window here? I didn't hear the rest. Blood rushed in my ears as I walked back to the waiting room on shaking legs, my cold suddenly the least of my concerns. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in Harold's old armchair, staring at the walls we'd painted together, the floors we'd refinished, the life we'd built. And I thought about what I'd do next. The next morning, I stood in my kitchen making coffee with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. I'd spent the entire night replaying that conversation in my mind, hoping I'd misheard, hoping there was some other explanation. But there wasn't, was there? My son, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, nursed through chickenpox, sent to college with every dollar Harold and I could spare, was planning my funeral before I'd even gotten sick. He was measuring my life in real estate market cycles. I set down the coffee pot before I could drop it. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined possible. When Harold died, I'd told myself I still had my children. I wasn't alone. What a fool I'd been. I thought about calling Jennifer or Patricia, but what would I say? Your brother is waiting for me to die so he can sell the house? They'd think I was being paranoid. Paranoid like the elderly woman Bradley was probably already painting me as to his wife. How long had he been planning this? I walked through the house, seeing it through new eyes. Every concerned visit, every suggestion about assisted living, every question about my will, it had all been leading here. He'd been preparing, positioning himself, waiting. The cruelest part? I'd almost played right into his hands. I'd been considering adding him to my bank accounts for emergencies. He'd brought the paperwork 3 times. I'd hesitated each time for reasons I couldn't articulate, just a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Thank God I'd listened to that feeling. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Bradley had done his homework, where we'd celebrated his birthdays, and forced myself to think practically. What were my assets? The house, worth approximately $450,000 in the current market. My savings account, $67,000. Harold's life insurance had been used up on his medical bills, but I had a small investment account, maybe $30,000. My pension, some jewelry, nothing extraordinary. $500,000, give or take. Was that what my life was worth to my son? I pulled out the file folder where I kept important documents. My will, drafted 15 years ago, split everything equally among my 3 children. Standard, fair, what any parent would do. But that was before I knew what Bradley really wanted. What recourse did I have? He hadn't actually done anything illegal. You can't arrest someone for being a greedy, calculating bastard. He'd been careful, hadn't he? Just concerned suggestions, just loving care. Plausible deniability if I ever accused him, but I'd heard him. I knew the truth. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened window over the sink. 73 years old, gray hair, age spots on my hands. When had I become invisible to my own son? When had I stopped being his mother and become just an obstacle to his inheritance? I wouldn't cry. I refused to cry. Tears were for grief, and I wasn't grieving yet. I was angry. The business card sat in my wallet, tucked behind my driver's license. Robert Chen, attorney at law, estate planning and elder law. Patricia had sent it to me months ago after her own estate planning. Just in case you ever need someone, Mom, she'd written. He's supposed to be excellent. I pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over the numbers. Was I overreacting? Was I being paranoid? No. I'd heard what I'd heard. Bradley had asked about a timeline for my death like he was scheduling a home inspection. The phone rang 3 times before a professional voice answered. Chen and Associates, how may I help you? My name is Margaret Brennan, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I need to speak to Mr. Chen about changing my will, and I need it done quickly and quietly. Of course, Mrs. Brennan. May I ask what's prompting this urgency? I looked around my kitchen, at the life I'd built, at the home my son was already selling in his mind. I recently discovered that one of my beneficiaries is waiting for me to die. I'd like to make sure he's disappointed. There was a brief pause, then, Mr. Chen has an opening tomorrow at 10 a.m. Would that work for you? Perfect. I hung up and sat very still. I'd done it. I'd taken the first step. But the fear crept in immediately after. What if Bradley found out? What if he escalated? What if he tried to have me declared incompetent? Was I safe in my own home? I called my neighbor, Susan Martinez. We'd lived next door to each other for 18 years. She answered on the second ring. Susan, would you mind coming over for coffee? I need to talk to someone. 20 minutes later, she sat across from me, her face growing paler as I explained what I'd overheard. That son of a bitch, she whispered. Margaret, I'm so sorry. I need you to do me a favor, I said. If anything happens to me, anything at all, I need you to remember this conversation. Can you do that? Susan reached across and gripped my hand. Nothing's going to happen to you. We won't let it. But we both knew that wasn't a promise anyone could make. I slept better that night, though, knowing I wasn't completely alone. I had an appointment with the lawyer. I had a witness. I had a plan starting to form. Bradley called the next morning. Mom, how are you feeling? Is your cold better? I thought about confronting him right then, but no. I needed to be smart about this. Much better, sweetheart, I said, the endearment tasting like ash in my mouth. Dr. Morrison said I'll be fine. That's great, Mom. Really great. Did I imagine the disappointment in his voice, or was it really there? I need to run some errands today, I continued. I'll be out most of the morning. Do you need a ride? I can come by. No, Susan's taking me. We're making a day of it. A pause. Okay. Well, call if you need anything. I would need something, all right. I would need him out of my life. Robert Chen's office was in a modest brick building downtown, sandwiched between a cafe and a dental practice. I arrived 15 minutes early, my purse clutched tight against my side, carrying copies of every financial document I could find. The waiting room smelled like leather and old books. Comforting, somehow. Susan had offered to come with me, but I'd declined. This was something I needed to do alone. Mrs. Brennan? A slim man in his 40s emerged from the inner office, extending his hand. I'm Robert Chen. Please, come in. His office was organized chaos, files stacked neatly, diplomas on the wall, a photo of 2 young children on his desk. He gestured to a comfortable chair and poured me a glass of water without asking. Tell me everything, he said simply. So I did. I told him about Bradley's questions, about Vanessa's comments, about the overheard conversation with Dr. Morrison. I told him about the house, the will, the slow realization that my son saw me as an impediment rather than a mother. Robert Chen listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, he sat back in his chair. Mrs. Brennan, I'm going to be direct with you. Your son hasn't committed any crime. Being eager for an inheritance while morally reprehensible isn't illegal. My heart sank. However, he continued, what you've described suggests a pattern of potential elder exploitation. And there are absolutely steps we can take to protect you and your assets. The fact that you're here, lucid and competent, gives us significant legal standing. What do you recommend? He pulled out a legal pad. First, we revoke your current will and draft a new one. Second, we establish a living trust for your assets. Third, we set up a durable power of attorney with someone you trust explicitly, not Bradley. Fourth, we create an advance healthcare directive. These documents will make it extremely difficult for anyone to manipulate you or your estate. How quickly can we do this? I can have everything drafted by the end of the week. We'll need witnesses who can attest to your mental competency. Do you have people who would be willing? I thought of Susan, of my friend Eleanor from book club, of Pastor Williams from my church. Yes, several. Good. Now, I need to ask you something important. Do you want to completely disinherit Bradley, or simply ensure he can't access anything until after your death, with protections in place? I'd been thinking about this all night. I want to leave him something, enough that he can't contest the will as easily. But the bulk of my estate should go to my daughters and to charities. And I want ironclad language that he receives nothing if he challenges the will. Robert nodded approvingly. An interim clause. Smart. That'll make him think twice. He paused. Mrs. Brennan, has your son ever shown any signs of aggression? Do you feel physically safe? I don't know anymore. If that changes, you call the police immediately. Document everything. Visits, phone calls, conversations. If he asks about your will or finances, write it down with dates and times. This is your paper trail. We spent another hour going over details. He explained trusts and probate, healthcare proxies, and intestacy laws. My head spun with terminology, but underneath the confusion was a growing sense of control. As I stood to leave, Robert handed me his card. Call me day or night if you need me. And Mrs. Brennan, you're doing the right thing. You're protecting yourself. I walked out of that office feeling 10 years younger, but the feeling didn't last long. That evening, Bradley showed up unannounced. I was in the garden, deadheading roses, when I heard his car in the driveway. My stomach clenched. Mom. He came around the side of the house, Vanessa trailing behind him. There you are. We brought dinner. They'd never done that before. How thoughtful, I managed, but I've already eaten. Oh, come on, it's your favorite, Chinese from Golden Dragon. He held up the bags, smiling that smile I used to trust. We can all eat together. Something in his eyes was different. Alert. Searching. We sat at the kitchen table, and I picked at the lo mein while Bradley chattered about his work, about Vanessa's sister's baby, about nothing important. But he kept steering the conversation back to me. So where did you go this morning? Susan said you two went downtown? My pulse quickened. Shopping, just boring errands. What kind of errands? Bradley, why all the questions? I tried to sound light, annoyed rather than defensive. No reason. I just like to know you're okay. You're my mom. He reached across and patted my hand. You'd tell me if something was wrong, right? If you needed help with anything? Bills, paperwork, anything like that? There it was. He was fishing. Everything's fine, sweetheart. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Vanessa spoke up for the first time. Of course you are, Margaret. But you know, at a certain point, it's wise to have help. My grandmother waited too long, and it was such a mess when she finally needed someone to step in. We're just thinking ahead. How considerate. I couldn't keep the ice from my voice. Bradley's eyes narrowed slightly. Mom, are you upset about something? Should I be? The air in the kitchen grew thick. Bradley and Vanessa exchanged a glance I couldn't quite read. Of course not, Bradley said slowly. I just feel like maybe you're pulling away from us, like you don't trust us. I wanted to scream the truth at him. Instead, I smiled. Don't be silly. I'm just tired. I think I'll turn in early. After they left, I found the gift they'd brought, a folder tucked inside the Chinese food bag. I opened it with shaking hands. Financial power of attorney forms, healthcare proxy forms, all with Bradley's name pre-filled. He'd brought them to dinner. He'd planned to get me to sign them. I called Robert Chen immediately. They know I'm up to something. Stay calm. How much do they actually know? They suspect. Bradley asked where I went today. He brought legal forms trying to get access to my accounts. Did you sign anything? Absolutely not. Good. We move faster then. Can you come in tomorrow? Bring your witnesses. We'll execute everything. That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. I kept thinking about those forms, about Bradley's searching eyes, about how quickly concern could turn to something darker. What had I unleashed? And more importantly, what would Bradley do when he found out I'd cut him off? The signing ceremony, as Robert called it, took place in his office at 2 p.m. the next day. Susan was there, along with Eleanor and Pastor Williams. Robert had a notary present as well. Margaret Brennan, are you executing these documents of your own free will, without coercion or undue influence? Robert asked formally. I am. And do you understand the nature and consequences of these documents? I do. One by one, I signed. The new will, leaving Bradley only $50,000, enough that he couldn't claim complete disinheritance, but a fraction of what he'd expected. The rest would be split between Jennifer and Patricia, with substantial donations to the local library, the animal shelter, and the church. Harold and I had attended for 40 years. The Living Trust, placing my house and investments beyond anyone's immediate reach. The power of attorney, naming Patricia as my agent. The healthcare directive, ensuring Bradley would have no say in my medical decisions. Each signature felt like cutting a cord. How do you feel? Susan asked me afterward, over coffee at the cafe next door. Like I've just divorced my own son. She squeezed my hand. You've protected yourself. That's not the same thing. But it felt the same. It felt like grief and liberation tangled together. I went home that evening and sat in the silence of my house. The documents were filed. The trust was funded. Robert had already sent certified letters to my bank, my investment company, my insurance providers. The fortress was built. Now I just had to wait for Bradley to discover it. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, he appeared at my door at 8 in the morning. No phone call, no warning. His face was flushed, his jaw tight. We need to talk, now. I stepped aside to let him in, my heart hammering. He stalked into my living room, Vanessa close behind. She looked furious. I got a very interesting call yesterday, Bradley said, his voice dangerously quiet. From Mom's bank. Apparently, there's been a change to her accounts. I'm no longer listed as an emergency contact or beneficiary. That's correct. Care to explain why? I'd rehearsed this. Robert had coached me. Stay calm. Don't be defensive. You have every right to manage your own affairs. I decided to reorganize my financial arrangements. It's my money, Bradley. Your money. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The money Dad worked his entire life for, the money that's supposed to take care of this family. Your father worked to take care of me, and I'm still very much alive. Vanessa stepped forward. Margaret, we're worried about you. These sudden changes, the secrecy, these are signs of cognitive decline. We think you might be experiencing some confusion. I'm not confused. My voice came out sharper than I intended. I know exactly what I'm doing. Bradley's mask slipped. For just a moment, I saw raw fury in his eyes. You can't do this. I'm your son. I have a right. You have no rights to my property while I'm living. Did someone put you up to this? He was pacing now, agitated. That neighbor, Susan, did she tell you to cut me out? I made these decisions myself. Bullshit! The word exploded from him. Vanessa put a warning hand on his arm, but he shook her off. You've never made a financial decision in your life without Dad. Now suddenly you're setting up trusts? Hiring lawyers? Who's manipulating you? The only person who's been manipulating me is you. Silence dropped like a stone. Bradley's face went pale, then red. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I heard you, Bradley, at Dr. Morrison's office. I heard you asking when you could sell my house. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's not... You misunderstood. How long does she have? I need to know because we're looking at selling her house. Those were your exact words. Vanessa recovered first. Margaret, you took that completely out of context. Bradley was simply trying to plan ahead to make sure we could help you if you needed assisted living. Don't. I held up a hand. Don't insult my intelligence. I know what I heard. I know what you've been doing. All the visits, all the concern, all the questions about my will. You've been circling like vultures. Bradley's face twisted. You ungrateful. We've been taking care of you, driving you to appointments, checking on you, worrying about you. Worrying about your inheritance, you mean? He took a step toward me. I stood my ground, even though my legs felt weak. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. We'll contest. We'll have you declared incompetent. You're clearly not in your right mind. Try it. I was surprised by my own calm. My lawyer has already documented my complete mental competency. I have witnesses. I have medical records. You'll lose, and you'll waste whatever money you do get on legal fees. This isn't over, Mother. The formal title felt like a slap. You don't know what you've done. We needed that money. We have debts, obligations. Then get a job like everyone else. Vanessa grabbed his arm. Bradley, we should go. We should talk to our own lawyer. Yes, I said. You should go. At the door, Bradley turned back. You're making a huge mistake. When you're lying in a hospital bed, when you need someone to take care of you, don't come crying to us. I won't. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. Then my legs gave out, and I sank onto the couch. What had just happened? Had my son really threatened me? Had he really revealed himself so completely? I called Robert Chen. He knows. He came here. He threatened to have me declared incompetent. Did he threaten you physically? No, but he was angry, really angry. Document everything that was said. Write it down now while it's fresh. And Margaret? Consider this. He just showed his hand. If he tries legal action now, we can use this conversation against him. He's digging his own grave. Over the next week, I barely left the house. I felt bruised, exhausted, like I'd been through a battle. Susan checked on me daily. Eleanor brought meals. Pastor Williams called to pray with me. I needed this time. I needed to mourn the son I'd thought I had and accept the reality of the man he'd become. But I also knew this wasn't over. Bradley wasn't the type to accept defeat. He was regrouping, planning, and I needed to be ready for whatever came next. The first letter arrived a week later, handwritten, on Bradley's personalized stationery. Dear Mom, I'm so sorry for how I reacted. I was shocked and hurt, and I said things I didn't mean. You're my mother, and I love you. Nothing matters more than our relationship. Can we please talk? I miss you. Love. Bradley. I read it twice, looking for the trap. It sounded sincere. It sounded like the son I'd raised. But I'd learned the difference between sounding and being. I didn't respond. 3 days later, flowers arrived. 24 roses, my favorite color. The card read, Please forgive me. You're all I have. B. I gave them to Susan. Then the phone calls started. Bradley called every morning at 9, leaving increasingly emotional voicemails. Mom, please pick up. I can't sleep knowing you're angry with me. Mom, Vanessa and I are in counseling. We're working on ourselves. We want to make this right. Mom, I've been thinking about Dad, about how disappointed he'd be to see us like this. He'd want us to reconcile. That last one almost worked. Almost. But Harold had been dead for 20 years, and invoking his name to manipulate me was a new low. I finally answered on the 5th call. Bradley. Mom. Oh, thank God, I've been so worried. Are you okay? I'm fine. Listen, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But I want to fix this. Can I come over? Can we talk face to face? I don't think that's a good idea. Please. His voice cracked convincingly. I'm your son. Don't shut me out forever. I made a mistake, but haven't you ever made mistakes? Didn't you teach me that forgiveness was important? The guilt hooks, the manipulation tactics. I could hear them all now, clear as bells. Bradley, I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean putting myself back in a position to be hurt. I would never hurt you. You already did. That's not fair. I was stressed, I was worried about money, and I said something stupid to a doctor in a private conversation. You were never supposed to hear that. It doesn't mean I don't love you. Love isn't measuring your mother's life against the real estate market. Silence. Then, I apologized. What more do you want from me? Nothing, Bradley. I want nothing from you. You're really going to throw away our entire relationship over one mistake? You're really going to pretend this was one mistake? What about the power of attorney forms? What about trying to get me into assisted living? What about questioning my competence? I was trying to help. No, you were trying to get control of my assets. And now that you can't, you're trying to guilt me into giving you another chance. His tone shifted. The warmth drained out. You know, you're being incredibly selfish. Vanessa and I have been struggling financially. We thought you'd want to help your own son. Get a job. I have a job. It's not enough. The economy is terrible and we have expenses. Not my problem. Wow. His laugh was bitter. Dad would be ashamed of you. No, I said quietly. Dad would be ashamed of you. Goodbye, Bradley. I hung up. My hands were steady. My conscience was clear. I'd given him nothing to work with. The attempts continued, though. Vanessa sent me a long email about how much they loved me, how they'd made mistakes but wanted to be better, how they hoped I'd reconsider whatever it is you've done with your estate planning. I deleted it without responding. They sent gifts, a new cardigan in my favorite color, a book I'd mentioned wanting to read, a framed photo of Bradley as a child, calculated to pull at my heartstrings. I donated everything to Goodwill, but I wasn't weathering this alone. Susan became my daily checkpoint, stopping by every evening for tea. Eleanor invited me to join her gardening club. Pastor Williams asked me to volunteer with the church's literacy program, working with immigrant families learning English. For the first time in years, I had a full life again. I'd spent so much time being Bradley's mother that I'd forgotten how to be Margaret. One afternoon, I was at the library organizing donated books when a young woman approached me. She looked nervous. Mrs. Brennan, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm Cheryl. I'm Bradley's co-worker at the insurance office. My guard went up immediately. Did Bradley send you? No, God, no. I came because I think you should know something. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. Bradley's been telling everyone at work that you have dementia, that you've become paranoid and aggressive, that you've cut him off for no reason. He's building a narrative. My blood ran cold. For what purpose? He's consulting with lawyers. He wants to establish that you're incompetent so he can get guardianship over you and your finances. Can he do that? I don't know. But I've seen him manipulate situations before. He's convincing. And he's desperate. He and Vanessa are drowning in debt. Credit cards, a second mortgage on their house, loans from her parents. They need money badly. Why are you telling me this? Cheryl's eyes filled with tears. Because my grandmother went through something similar with my uncle. By the time we realized what was happening, he'd gotten control of everything and put her in the cheapest nursing home he could find. She died alone and heartbroken. I won't stand by and watch it happen to someone else. I took her hand. Thank you. Truly. That evening, I called Robert Chen and told him everything. This is good, actually, he said. If Bradley's spreading false claims about your mental state and we can prove it's false, it strengthens your position. I'll reach out to Dr. Morrison and get a formal letter confirming your cognitive health. We'll also want to do a new competency evaluation with a psychiatrist. Would you be willing? Whatever it takes. Margaret, you're handling this exactly right. You're building an impenetrable wall. Keep it up. I felt stronger after that call. Bradley thought he could paint me as a confused old woman. But I had doctors, lawyers, witnesses, and a paper trail that told the truth. Still, a small part of me ached. This was my son, the baby I'd nursed, the child I'd defended on playgrounds and at parent-teacher conferences. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this person, and I'd simply refused to see it? 2 weeks of silence followed Cheryl's warning. 2 weeks where I almost relaxed, almost believed Bradley had given up. Then they showed up on Sunday morning, just as I was leaving for church. They were on my porch, both dressed nicely. Bradley held a bakery box. Vanessa carried a bouquet of fresh tulips. They looked like the picture of contrite adult children. "Mom, please don't shut the door," Bradley said quickly. "We just want 5 minutes, please." Against my better judgment, or perhaps because Pastor Williams's sermon last week had been about reconciliation, I let them in. We sat in the living room, the same room where we'd had our confrontation weeks ago. But this time, their approach was completely different. "Mom, we've been doing a lot of soul searching," Bradley began. "I've been seeing a therapist. Vanessa and I both have. And we've realized we've handled this all wrong. We never meant to make you feel used or unloved," Vanessa added softly. "We can see now how our anxiety about the future came across as greed. That was never our intention." I said nothing. I waited. Bradley leaned forward, his expression earnest. "The truth is, we've been under a lot of financial pressure. I should have been honest with you about that instead of whatever it looked like I was doing. We need help, and I was too proud to ask for it directly." "So you asked my doctor instead when I'd die?" He winced. "That was the lowest moment of my life. I was desperate and scared, and I said something unforgivable. But it doesn't reflect who I am. You know me, Mom. You raised me. Am I really the villain you're making me out to be?" The question was designed to make me doubt myself. It almost worked. "What do you want, Bradley?" "We want a relationship with you," Vanessa said. "We want to be a family again. We miss having dinner together, going to movies, celebrating holidays. Don't you miss that too?" I did miss it. I missed the fantasy of a loving son. But I didn't miss the reality. "And," Bradley continued carefully, "we were hoping that maybe, if we can rebuild trust, you might reconsider some of the changes you've made. Not for us. We don't expect anything. But because cutting us out completely seems so final, so harsh." There it was. The real reason for this visit. "You want me to change my will back. We want you to make decisions based on love, not fear," Bradley said. "Whatever someone has told you about us, whatever you think we were planning, it's not true, Mom. We love you. We'd never hurt you." Vanessa pulled out a tissue, dabbing at her eyes. "We've made mistakes, Margaret. We're not perfect, but we're family. Doesn't that mean something?" I looked at them both. Bradley with his practiced sincerity, Vanessa with her calculated tears. They'd rehearsed this. They'd strategized. This was their last play, their final manipulation. And I'd almost fallen for it. "You're right," I said slowly. "Family does mean something. It means people who love you unconditionally. People who care about your well-being more than your bank account. People who don't measure your life in timelines and market windows." Bradley's face tightened. "Mom, I know what you are," I continued. "I've known since I heard you at Dr. Morrison's office, and everything you've done since then has only confirmed it. The threats, the attempts to have me declared incompetent, the lies you've been spreading about my mental state. Yes, Bradley, I know about those too." Vanessa's tears dried up instantly. "Someone's been feeding you lies. Cheryl from your office isn't a liar. Dr. Morrison isn't a liar. The bank representatives you called trying to get information about my accounts aren't liars. You are. Bradley stood up abruptly. This is insane. You're actually insane. We came here to reconcile, and you're attacking us with paranoid accusations. Get out of my house. We're trying to help you, his voice rose. You're 73 years old, living alone, clearly not thinking clearly. I said, get out. Vanessa stood too, her face flushed with anger. You're going to regret this. You're going to end up alone and sick, with no one to take care of you, and it'll be your own fault. Better alone than with vultures. We're your family, Bradley shouted. We have a right to be in your life. You have no rights where I'm concerned. Not to my home, not to my money, not to my time. Now leave, or I'll call the police. Call them. Bradley's face was red, a vein throbbing in his temple. Call them, and explain how you've cut off your devoted son for no reason. See whose side they take. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. That made them move. Vanessa grabbed Bradley's arm, pulling him toward the door. You'll pay for this, Bradley hissed at me. One way or another, you'll pay. Is that a threat? It's a promise. They slammed the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. I heard their car peel out of the driveway, tires squealing. Then I sagged into my chair, the phone still in my hand, shaking violently. The 911 operator's voice. 911. What's your emergency? I'm sorry. False alarm. My son was here, and he was threatening me, but he's left now. Ma'am, do you need an officer to come by and take a report? Did I? Would it help or make things worse? Yes, I heard myself say. Yes, please. Officer Martinez arrived 20 minutes later. I told her everything while she took notes. The overheard conversation, the legal changes, Bradley's attempts at manipulation, today's confrontation and threat. Mrs. Brennan, has your son ever been physically violent with you? No, but I'm afraid he might be. We can't arrest him for words alone, but I'm filing this report. If he contacts you again, if he comes to your property, if he threatens you in any way, you call us immediately. Don't wait. And consider getting a restraining order. After she left, I called Robert Chen, then Susan, then Pastor Williams. I needed people to know what had happened. I needed witnesses to Bradley's mask finally slipping completely. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Bradley's face, contorted with rage, kept appearing in my mind. You'll pay for this, one way or another. What would he do next? How far would he go? But beneath the fear was something else. Something harder. Something that felt almost like pride. I'd stood my ground. I hadn't given in to guilt or manipulation. I'd protected myself. Whatever came next, I'd face it, because I was stronger than my son had ever given me credit for. And I'd be damned if I'd let him win. 3 days later, I received a certified letter. Bradley was filing for emergency guardianship, claiming I was mentally incompetent and a danger to myself. The court hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. This is exactly what we expected, Robert Chen said when I showed him the papers, and we're completely prepared for it. More than prepared. We're going to destroy his case. Over the next 13 days, Robert assembled my defense like a general preparing for war. Dr. Morrison provided a detailed letter confirming my excellent cognitive health. We had a psychiatrist conduct a full competency evaluation. I passed with flying colors. We gathered bank statements showing I'd been managing my finances perfectly for decades. We compiled witness statements from Susan, Eleanor, Pastor Williams, and even Cheryl from Bradley's office. And we had the police report from his threat. Margaret, by the time we're done, Bradley won't just lose this case, Robert said grimly. He'll have destroyed any chance of ever contesting your will successfully. The judge will see him for exactly what he is. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. A navy suit Harold had always loved, pearl earrings, hair neatly styled. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a competent, dignified woman who knew her own mind. The courthouse was smaller than I'd expected. We gathered in a conference room rather than a formal courtroom. Judge Patricia Hernandez presiding, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Bradley sat across from me with his lawyer, a thin man named Gerald Pritchard, who looked uncomfortable with his case. Vanessa was conspicuously absent. Judge Hernandez reviewed the petition. Mr. Brennan, you're seeking emergency guardianship over your mother, claiming she's mentally incompetent and has made irrational financial decisions. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Bradley said earnestly. My mother has been acting erratically. She's cut off contact with her family, made sudden changes to her will and finances without explanation, and has become paranoid and hostile. I'm deeply concerned for her well-being. Mrs. Brennan, how do you respond? I looked at my son across the table. Really looked at him. He met my gaze for a moment, then looked away. Your Honor, I'm not incompetent. I'm protecting myself from financial exploitation. Those are serious allegations. I have serious evidence. Robert began presenting our case methodically. First, Dr. Morrison's letter and medical records. Then the psychiatric evaluation showing my cognitive function was above average for my age group. Bank statements proving decades of sound financial management. Character witnesses attesting to my clear thinking and independence. Bradley's lawyer tried to object. These recent evaluations were clearly orchestrated. My client has observed concerning behavior over months. Such as? Judge Hernandez asked. Paranoia, refusing help, isolating herself. Mr. Brennan, the judge interrupted. Did your mother need help? Was she failing to pay bills, leaving the stove on, getting lost in familiar places? Bradley hesitated. Not specifically. But she's 73. I'm 71, Judge Hernandez said dryly. Continue, Mr. Chen. Robert stood. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that this guardianship petition is not motivated by concern for Mrs. Brennan's welfare, but by financial interest. He handed the judge a transcript. This is a conversation Mrs. Brennan overheard between her son and her doctor. With Dr. Morrison's permission, we've confirmed the content. Judge Hernandez read it. Her expression grew colder with each line. Mr. Brennan, did you ask your mother's doctor when she would die so you could plan to sell her house? Bradley went pale. That's taken out of context. It's a yes or no question. I was concerned about planning ahead. Yes or no? The conversation happened, but it wasn't meant the way it sounds. We also have evidence, Robert continued, that Mr. Brennan has been spreading false claims about his mother's mental state to co-workers and acquaintances, that he attempted to convince her to sign power of attorney documents under false pretenses, and that when she refused, he threatened her in her own home. We have a police report from that incident. He handed over more documents. Cheryl's affidavit, the police report, a stack of emails and text messages from Bradley asking others if they'd noticed his mother losing it. Judge Hernandez read everything in silence. The room was so quiet I could hear Bradley breathing, fast and shallow. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Brennan, I've been doing this for 23 years. I've seen many guardianship cases, and I've seen many instances of adult children genuinely concerned for aging parents. This is not one of them. Your Honor, I love my mother. You love her assets. Judge Hernandez's voice could have cut glass. Your petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering a restraining order preventing you from contacting Mrs. Brennan directly or indirectly. You will stay at least 500 feet from her home. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. Bradley shot to his feet. This is ridiculous. She's an old woman being manipulated by lawyers and neighbors. Sit down, Mr. Brennan. Judge Hernandez didn't raise her voice, but Bradley sat. Your mother is clearly more competent than you're giving her credit for. She recognized financial exploitation and took appropriate legal steps to protect herself. That's not incompetence. That's wisdom. She turned to me. Mrs. Brennan, I'm sorry you've had to go through this. No parent should have to defend themselves against their own children in court. Thank you, Your Honor. As for you, Mr. Brennan, I'm putting a note in this file. If you ever attempt another guardianship petition or will contest without substantial new evidence, I'll consider it harassment and rule accordingly. Do you understand? Bradley's lawyer put a hand on his arm, but Bradley shook him off. This is a travesty. She's going to die alone because of people like you who don't understand. We're done here. Judge Hernandez gathered her papers. Mrs. Brennan, you're free to go. Mr. Brennan, I suggest you examine your priorities. In the hallway outside, I had to lean against the wall for a moment. My legs felt weak, but it was relief, not fear. You did it, Susan said, appearing at my side. She'd been in the waiting area. You actually did it. Robert shook my hand. That was one of the most clear-cut denials I've ever seen. Judge Hernandez eviscerated his case. Through the courtroom door's window, I could see Bradley arguing furiously with his lawyer. His face was red, his gestures wild. He looked like a stranger. He looked like someone who'd finally, completely lost. Come on, Susan said gently. Let's get you home. As we walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sun, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Freedom. The restraining order was served to Bradley that afternoon. According to Robert, he'd tried to argue with the officer, which only made things worse. He's burning every bridge he has left, Robert told me. The next week brought cascading consequences for Bradley and Vanessa that I watched with grim satisfaction. First, word spread. In a town our size, a public guardianship hearing doesn't stay secret. The narrative Bradley had crafted, the concerned son with a deteriorating mother, collapsed. Everyone now knew the truth. Jennifer called from Oregon. Mom, I just heard what happened. I can't believe Bradley would do this. My daughters flew out the following week. For 3 days, we talked, laughed, cooked together. They met Susan and Eleanor. They saw I wasn't some fragile, confused woman, but a person with a full life. We're going to visit more, Jennifer promised. You're not alone anymore. But Bradley was alone. Cheryl told me he'd been called into his supervisor's office. His attempts to manipulate me had raised questions about his ethics. He was placed on probation at work. Vanessa's parents demanded immediate repayment of their loans. Bradley and Vanessa couldn't pay, so they had to sell their house, in a down market. The irony wasn't lost on me. Bradley had planned to put me in assisted living to get my house. Now he was downsizing while I remained in mine. The will was ironclad now. Robert had added specific language about the court case. Any challenge would trigger the in terrorem clause, and Bradley would lose even the $50,000 I'd left him. More than legal consequences, Bradley faced social exile. People stopped inviting him and Vanessa to events. Friends drifted away. 3 months later, I saw him at the grocery store. I was with Susan, getting ingredients for a dinner party. He was alone, looking haggard. Our eyes met across the produce section. He looked away first. He looked defeated, hollow. I remembered his voice asking when I'd die. I remembered his threats. No, I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt free. My life bloomed. The literacy program became my passion. I joined book club, started exercise classes, took a painting course. I updated my will again, reducing Bradley's inheritance to $1. The symbolic dollar. He made his choices, I told Robert. These are the consequences. 6 months later, Bradley's lawyer sent a letter. Bradley was dropping all claims. He asked only for one mediated conversation for closure. I wrote back one sentence. No. That evening, I hosted dinner. Susan, Eleanor, Pastor Williams, Cheryl. My home was full of people who actually cared about me. Susan raised her glass. To Margaret, the strongest woman I know. Later, alone, I walked through each room. This was mine. Truly, completely mine. I'd won my freedom, my dignity, my right to live on my own terms. And Bradley had lost everything, with no one to blame but himself. A year after the court hearing, my life had transformed completely. The literacy program expanded. I worked with 6 women regularly. My daughters visited frequently. Patricia and I took that trip to Ireland, scattering some of Harold's ashes in County Kerry. I started dating George, a widower from painting class. Just companionship and laughter. I established a scholarship fund in Harold's name. My investment account grew steadily. Meanwhile, Bradley lost his job after accounting irregularities. Vanessa left him. He moved into a studio apartment, working retail at a big box store. I saw him once from a distance, wearing a blue vest. He'd aged badly, gray hair, stooped shoulders. He looked older than me. His friends, wife, job, house, reputation, all gone. For money he never received. Jennifer and Patricia cut him off completely after reading the court transcripts. On my 75th birthday, 50 people celebrated with me. I chose joy. So that's my story. My son tried to steal my life while I was still living it, and I stopped him. Here's what I learned. Trust yourself. Protect yourself. Your children are not entitled